Thanks very much, everybody, for joining me once again. My guest today is a former Surrey and England cricketer. He's captained both teams, captained Surrey very successfully. He's coached all around the world. And recently, he was the batting coach for Pakistan when they toured New Zealand and Australia. Very warm welcome to Adam Hollioake. Thanks for your time, Adam.
Hi, guys. How are you?
How was it to be the batting coach for an unpredictable team like Pakistan, Adam?
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure what to expect when I took the job offer. So obviously you hear a lot of stuff about Pakistan and the difficulties they have with selection and boards and stuff like that. But I was really pleasantly surprised when I got there. Like, great bunch of guys, and Hafiz is a good coach as well. So it was a good, was a great experience, actually. Probably one of my favorite teams that I've been involved with. Really nice guys, very religious, but good people. So that made the 2 months, even though we didn't win too many games, it made the 2 months more enjoyable because they were such good people and good to be around.
You mentioned not winning many games. Pakistan have lost 17 test matches in a row now in Australia. Where do you think it went wrong? Obviously, I mean, looking at the numbers, there were quite a few players who managed 50s, but there wasn't a single 100 in that test series against Australia. That's probably one of the biggest problems, isn't it?
Yeah, probably. The wickets were quite sporty. There was only 100 in the whole series, so the Aussies only got one. And that was David Warner in the first test, and that was very flashy 100. It was like he could have been out several times. The wickets, I mean, I'm quite speak quite often to Steve Smith and Marnus Labuschagne, Usman Khawaja. They said they can't remember a series where the wickets were so sporty out in Australia. So it was a tough wickets to bat on. So, when Australia only get 100 in a series, then you know that it's pretty difficult.
Babar Azam went to Australia with big reputation, and he struggled out there, Adam. Why do you think that was? Was it just a good player out of form or something else?
I'm not even sure he was out of form. Again, it was the wickets were, they were quite sporty. They were seaming around the whole way through the innings. So he was often in quite early. Other than the first innings of the first test, he was often in quite early. So he was having to deal with a lot of movement. And, it's just one of those series. You either, after you've had a couple of failures, then, you pressure builds. And I don't think there's anything technically wrong. He then went to New Zealand and did really well in the T20. So technically, there's no problems. I just think it was very, very good attack.
How difficult is it for Pakistani and Asian batsmen in general to go out there and be successful on tracks that you've mentioned there in Australia?
It's very difficult. To most people, it probably doesn't seem like much, but the bounce out here in Australia is quite considerably different. So, trying to tell players like Babar Azam and, even Shan Masood or any of those guys that they really, it's not a place to be cover driving, where in a place like Pakistan is probably one of the most productive shots. It's quite hard because you're fighting all their careers. They've been playing those shots, and all of a sudden you're saying, look, that shot gets you in a lot of trouble out here. So, and then, I'm not sure whose fault it is or if it's anyone's fault at all, if it's just the nature of modern day cricket. But they had one warm-up game in Canberra on a wicket that they would have called slow and low in Pakistan. So it was a terrible preparation for the first test match. I mean, that's not an excuse. I know these days they like to get the tours. They don't have too many warm-up games. I would have liked to see them have a couple of warm-up games, maybe play a game in Perth on wickets that was similar to what they played in the test match, because that really wasn't preparation for that first test. And I think that showed in the results when we got to Perth.
I mean, you were obviously involved in the preparation in Pakistan ahead of the tour of Australia. Looking back now, would you suggest anything different to the Pakistan Cricket Board in terms of the preparation in Pakistan?
Yeah, I did ask that question. I said to, Hafiz, how did you accept a warm-up game in Canberra so they have to fly from Pakistan all the way over to the east coast of Australia and then back to Perth, and then after the Perth test, we've got to fly back again. Australia's a big country. They're 5-hour flights. Could have been easy to fly straight into Perth, have a warm-up game there on pitches similar to what they were going to play, and then have one flight across Australia. It would have made a lot more sense. But those decisions were made before Hafiz became the director of cricket. He never would have accepted that. But those decisions were made before he was appointed. So, those decisions get made a couple of years before the tour starts. They have to set the itinerary and book the hotels and grounds and what have you. So, there's nothing much we could do about that. We just had to accept what there was and get on with it. So, disappointing, but when you're an international side, you just got to do the best that you can with what's presented to you. So they kept their chin up, they kept going the whole way, and it was a hard tour. Most sides who come out here find it very tough. So I wouldn't be looking too much into, especially subcontinent sides coming to Australia, historically struggle a lot.
Speaking about Mohammad Rizwan specifically, I mean, he was standout performer, really, wasn't he, in Australia and in New Zealand? What makes him such a good batter?
He's brave. He's a very brave player. He plays his shots. He's got this shot which he plays to what I would consider quite a good ball. It's just back of a length, and he flips that over square leg or backward square leg, and it gives the bowler very small margin for error. I was talking to him about it, and he said he only developed it a couple of years ago, and it's changed his game. So that shot in particular, and he's a short guy, so anything waist height and above, he just flips it over square leg or just behind square leg, and that then for the bowler means they've got to try and bowl very full, and that's playing into his hand. So he's a difficult guy to tie down. Very brave guy, like great attitude to the game, and fascinating guy to work with, actually.
Moving to New Zealand, Adam, we saw the likes of Saim Ayub, young left-handed opening batter, come in to the side. What do you think of him? Obviously, his reputation's growing in Pakistan cricket, and any areas that you think he needs to work on, and how highly do you rate him?
Well, firstly, I don't think I've seen a more talented young player. I've worked with Queensland and England, some other countries, Papua New Guinea, Hong Kong. Obviously here in Australia, I see all the young players at the carnivals. I haven't seen a more talented player than him. He didn't play the first 2 test matches. So when you're the batting coach, you spend a lot of time with those players, because whilst the test match is going on, you're practicing at the back, and I'm throwing with a dog stick, and you come pretty close and you throw pretty hard at them. After a couple of test matches, you've hardly been beaten his edge. You've hardly, haven't got him out. You realise you're dealing with a player with a lot of talent. I think he's a potential great of the game. I mean, it's early days. Test cricket's a hard place, but he has the ability to be one of the great players. Technically, this is mentally how he'll stand up to, the hamster wheel of international cricket. It can be quite grinding. So how he stands up to that and how he bounces back from failure, because every cricketer has failure. So those are the 2 things I don't know about. Everything else, he ticks all the boxes. So he's a very exciting guy.
Question marks over Pakistan's ability to power hit. We see the likes of Rohit Sharma, Finn Allen, who we saw in New Zealand, and many other players around the world. But Pakistan just doesn't seem to have those power hitters, Adam. Is that sort of a mindset, or is it just the type of batters that Pakistan have at the moment?
Well, Rizwan's, he's not a power hitter, but he's a guy who can, score, 150, 160 runs per 100 balls. He's someone that Bubba Azam, he's obviously a talented guy. He can go along at 130, 140, even within himself. And I think Saim will be someone who does that as well once he gets his feet in international cricket. So they're not power hitters in the sense of guys who are going to smack it 100 meters straight back over the bowler's head, but they can still be damaging, hitting the ball square of the wicket, fours, sixes. We had a couple of guys down the order who are big, strong guys, Osama and Abbas. Those guys are big, strong, powerful guys. We only saw Abbas whack a couple of sixes in the third one, that T20. But he's guy in the nets. Those two guys, I'd often have them batting together and have them practicing power hitting against one another. They're guys, once they find their feet in T20, I think they're guys who could do it. I'm not saying they're necessarily going to go and open the batting, but they're guys who can come in the last 5 or 6 overs and bang a couple of sixes there. So, Finn Allen's he's a pretty unique in that sense. There's a lot of countries that don't have a Finn Allen. So those guys don't, come along that often. So I'm probably more concerned about the way we bowled at him rather than trying to have someone who bats like him. So I think Pakistan's batting's in a good place. I'd like to see a little bit more structure in their system and some of the fielding. It's hard when you an international coach like Hafiz is, and you turn up and you're having to teach some of these guys the basics of fielding. That should be being learnt during the age group stuff. By the time you play for Pakistan under 19s, you should be a good fielder. By the time you come to international cricket, you shouldn't be having to teach guys how to field properly. So I was shocked that not so much. The guys have ability to field. The fact that they had very little understanding about the technique of fielding. So, and that's something that, like I coached Queensland under 17s here, where we were teaching that to those guys when they're 15, 16 years old. So that's an area where I think they can improve. I think that's a big area, because fielding probably costs Pakistan 1 or 2 test matches and probably a couple of T20s. So that's a big difference. Instead of being 3-0, 4-1, it could be, 2-1 victory in the test matches if they held their catches, and then a 3-2 win in the T20. So it's easy to gloss over that, but I think that's something they need to look at in their system, not teach guys to field once they get to international cricket. All the domestic sides should be good fielders. So that's an area where I think they could work on.
It's a big year in T20 cricket this year, Adam, with the World Cup later in the year. There's still question marks over who should be opening the batting for Pakistan in T20Is. Should it be Babar Azam and Mohammad Rizwan, or do you think it's now time for a change?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The good thing is there's options. The fact that you're saying, is it Babar Azam and Rizwan, or do we put a Saim up top, or do you go really left field and go with one of those power hitting boys, an Abbas or something like that, to try and come out? And there's quite a few different options. That sounds a bit left field, but that's what T20 is. You can go. They've always done Rizwan and Babar and Babar Azam. So it's a time in leading up to the T20 World Cup to try a few combinations and see what works. I'd like to see Saim there. I think that once he finds his feet, the thing about Babar Azam is he bats 3. If Pakistan get off to the flyer and Saim and Rizwan get a good start, he's a great guy. He can come in, he can play so many different ways. He's a world-class player. He can play traditional, he can be destructive. And he's got that experience and just incredible player, all-round player. So I like to see him stay at 3 personally, but I understand that if someone doesn't grab that opening position with two hands, then he can step up and do that as well.
From your perspective, it must be a little bit frustrating to only be able to work with these players for a couple of series rather than long term, and that impact and sort of the value you can add is limited then, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But also that come out, and I feel sorry for the players really, because they're the ones who miss out. I know how the Pakistan cricket board's basically owned and run by the government, and when the government changes, the board changes, and they have a new coach, and the new coaches have new ideas. So the team's always changing and rebuilding. Whereas it'd be nice to see, I don't know how that works, I'm new to the Pakistan system, but it'd be nice to see them have some sort of ability to build a team for a couple of years, because I think if they could do that, then they could be, as good as anyone in the world.
And yourself, Adam, you'd be available to work for the Pakistan Cricket Board in the future if they asked you?
Oh, I'd go and work with Pakistan in a heartbeat. I love my time with them. I love Tafiz and the other coaches as well. They were, Umar Gul and Yasser Arafat. Great guys to work with. So yeah, I'd go and work with them again in a heartbeat. They've asked, we've spoken about potentially me being involved in the World Cup and some series before and after that. So we'll just see how it goes. I understand the difficulties they have with their politically, so I just have to wait and see what happens there.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Adam, and thanks for all your hard work in the Australia-New Zealand series. And let's hope that you get another opportunity to work with the boys in the future.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.